everyone joining us for this council meeting, and a special warm welcome to our new director of, I'm going to get this right, strategy, performance and design, Joanne O'Neill, joining us for the first time in the chamber. So welcome to the team, Joanne. Good to have you on board and look forward to working with you in the future. So thank you for taking on us, I guess, and all the best. So councillors, we go to apologies. Do we have any apologies? So we got Councillor Thompson and Councillor Lackler, I'm sure, are on their way. So move accepting the lateness. Deputy Mayor Halali, Councillor McCone, thank you. Those in favour say aye. Those against, that's carried. Do we have any declarations of interest? Okay, and there's no speakers in the public forum. So we will go straight to the item 4.1, recommendations from the Performance Audit and Risk Committee meeting. And I'm not sure if Mr. Hope, whether you want to speak to that one. Okay, Councillor McCann.
I meant to see in our agenda there's no minutes again for this last meeting. Is there a reason for that, please? I think we need a process that we can actually follow. As far as I'm concerned, it's a record of what we have and haven't done, and there's none here this time.
Okay, Mr. Family, are you able to address that?
Yeah, I mean, I've mentioned previously about our capacity constraints at the moment, and in particular, we've been focusing on the DPR and various iterations of that meeting. That is a priority at the moment. Yeah, we are in the process still of recruiting 2 positions within that team as well. So we are under capacity still at the moment.
Thank you. So we're on item 4.1, recommendations from the Performance Audit and Risk Committee, just around insurance renewals. So do we have anyone wishing to move that recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Cowles, and seconded Councillor Linwood. Thank you. Any comments on that? Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, look, I just want to be clear about something. And Mr. Hope can answer this, I would imagine. On page 10, we have a total of the premiums that we are proposing to pay. Or at least that's what it appears to be. We were paying, well, it looked as though we were paying for insurance 1.345 million, and that's gone up to nearly 1.5 million, 1,468,750. Is that our actual annual spend on insurance cover?
Mr. Hope's looking to answer that, but his microphone is not working. So
I knew that I knew that was the answer, but I would also make my issue here is this is an enormous amount of money. Now, yes, there are needs and protections that we are provided. But I'm just wondering, as part of our kind of assessment of costs and affordability and so forth, is the finance team looking critically at any alternatives that might reduce this? I mean, self-insurance I know is one, and we've chosen to do that in some areas. But it's an astonishingly large amount of money, is it not?
I think before we go, Mr. Hope, perhaps, but I know this staff did a lot of work on getting this reduced as much as possible, and just reporting from across the sector is that there's been huge increases in insurance. There's people at home or in business in the test to as well. The cost of insurance has gone up a lot. But Mr. Hope, do you want to go into any detail on what has been able to be achieved over there, renegotiations, etc.?
I mean, that essentially why there is a extensive report attached from our insurance brokers about the work that they've done to try and minimise this cost. So I suppose that was the exploration of options, but it does get down to then making some very hard choices about basically excess levels, which do not have the impact that they used to. And yeah, the level of self-insurance, that is the big option, that we just insure far less or have far less cover. The issue we also have is obviously the number of policies we have to cover the types of operations that we're involved in. We own a significant number of assets, and we are involved in businesses that have inherently high risks attached to them. And insurance is still one of the most cost-effective ways to mitigate those risks. So yes, we are very aware of this is a significant amount of expenditure. It chews up a reasonable portion of the rate takes for what is covered, but I think we go back to the lessons that were probably learned from the Christchurch earthquake in particular, that if you're not really putting effort into your insurance and having an appropriate amount of cover, you do end up with some very unpleasant surprises when something does occur where you thought you were covered and you weren't.
I guess also from the government's perspective, we have to be mindful that we are accepting to take on the risk ourselves by not insuring or perhaps under insuring some assets on the basis of managing that risk versus cost. And that's a conscious decision that we make along the way, and we need to always be mindful of that as well. Councillor Holding.
Just in regards to the LAPP pool, does the 30% increase match our revaluation on our assets?
Yeah, that's certainly what it's driven by. Just increasingly expensive to replace the assets that are covered by the LAP policy.
Our latest revaluation was wasn't quite a 30% increase, though, was it? Or was it?
That was a very significant increase, yes.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you. Regarding the LAPP, there's mention in the report around it's not been determined what will happen with water services possibly going to a CCO. So I just wondered what might we anticipate could happen there?
At the moment, I think if it was a CCO that was still directly owned by council, then the LAP cover would continue, because it's essentially, and that's what it's designed to do. If it goes into a larger entity where not all the members are members of LAP, obviously that creates a different discussion, and that wider entity, and that would be one of their key responsibilities, working out how they actually provide an appropriate level of cover for the members.
Okay, if there's nothing else, I'll put it. Those in favour, please say aye. Those against, that is carried. Thank you. On to the next item, 4.2, recommendations from the Ahuriri Community Board meeting from the 11th of November around the Otamatara Reserve improvements. Do we have someone move that? Councillor Cowles, thank you. Councillor Ryan, thank you very much for seconding that. Any discussion? Councillor Cowles.
Thank you, Mayor Kuchar. Looking at what is put before us here, the value that's come out of teaming up with other agencies and what's been achieved in Otamatara for this has been quite significant with very little input from council so far. There's been a lot of community work put into it, and the town is certainly looking better for the work that has been done. I guess this is putting the finishing touches on using the remaining funds, and it's great to see that the community had decided to move forward and finish the little last bits over. We've had a particularly hot week up there. Yesterday was stifling. Some shade will be much appreciated, I am sure, and overall it's looking really good. So I'm fully supportive of this.
Thank you. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, it looks fantastic and ORAI again to be congratulated. I have a question relating to the fact that it looks as though council through the board are going to accept maintenance and depreciation costs. Now, page 13 of the community board report, or page 32 of our agenda, identifies maintenance costs as approximately 2,500 per annum. I'm just curious to know what the life expectancy of the three shades is, because they're going to stay up apparently all year. And what's the sum for depreciating them on an annual basis, please?
Did you send that question in ahead of time?
No.
It's probably a fairly detailed one that I wouldn't expect officers to necessarily know on the spot.
Oh, okay. Well, no, the answer is I didn't send it in ahead of time. I'm sorry. It didn't occur to me to do so, but I perhaps having filed it, I'll happily and patiently wait for a reply.
Perhaps Councillor Kells has some knowledge of the operational aspect of it.
Look, the discussion was had. They're using a high quality shade. They're commercially available. It also does state in here that they're prepared to take them down over winter to make them last longer, and that's a community driven thing through the ORAI as well. So I'm sure that everything is being done to make sure that the longevity of these sail shades are extended for as long as possible.
Look, I don't doubt that. And in my own defence, when I read the resolution that we accept responsibility for maintenance and depreciation of the improvements, I just presumed that our eternally diligent staff would have crunched the numbers in both feet.
I'm sure they have, but they're probably not in this room. Okay, so any other questions or comments on this? Okay, I'll put it. Those in favour, please say aye. And those against, that is carried. Thank you. On to 4.3, recommendations of the Harbour Area Subcommittee meeting on the 12th of November. And through to that, so regarding the commercial status of the Oamaru Harbour. Mr. Would you like to make any comments on this? Because not everyone was necessarily there at the meeting, but or is that a question for Mr. Rendell?
I think would prefer to respond to questions, and I might get Mr. Rendell to come round and place himself near a microphone.
Okay, I think it's just because it's of the nature of this, and certainly the long-term nature of it. It's just helpful to make sure we've got a good explanation of it all. So, did you want to say anything first of all, Josh, before I go to questions, just on the overall reasons for going for looking at the commercial status of the harbour?
Yes, thank you. The commercial status of the harbour. So what we're actually considering here is to ask ORC to remove the commercial status of the harbour from its plans. At the moment, the Oamaru Harbour is considered commercial. However, the work that we currently do there isn't actually consistent with commercial harbours. The smaller fishing vessels that we have and the work that's undertaken in Normanby Wharf isn't consistent with commercial works. Us being listed as a commercial harbour means that we are looked at by people who are wanting to take broader commercial activities as a potential option for the harbour. The issue that we'd have by remaining as a commercial harbour is that there would be continued conflict and potentially an increased conflict in recreational activities that are undertaken within the harbour space itself. If you look at how the likes of Port Otago is managed as a commercial harbour, you don't really have the same level of recreational activities that are undertaken as what happens here in Oamaru. If we were to remain a commercial harbour, there's a whole lot of work that we should be doing in terms of compliance and regulatory spaces, including tighter management of some of the safety concerns within the space. So we figured that changing the status essentially legalised the way that the space is currently occupied.
Thank you very much. Very helpful. Councillors, questions? Councillor Ryan?
Thank you. There are a few questions raised at the Harbour Area Subcommittee about this report, especially around resolution 2, which I guess is why the wording was changed slightly from the recommendation. But was my understanding that we were going to get a bit more information at this meeting, I guess, around the limits of commerciality and, you know, what we could and couldn't do, and what are the limits of commercial operations, or will that still come, I guess, before the coastal planning navigation safety bylaws up for review?
Through the chair, that may have been committed to on the date. I'm not particularly certain. Sorry, there was another officer that was presenting the report. Well, I don't have that information to hand today. So if that is of concern, then that can be addressed later.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Councillor Holding recalls some of that discussion. We did talk about the, you know, retaining the ability, obviously, for fishing boats, commercial fishing boats and charters to still operate. We did talk about the opportunities around some of, you know, small cruise ship visits with tenders coming in and still being able to do that. But it certainly took away some of the longer term risk of running a commercial harbour and everything that entailed from a management point of view. Councillor Holding, do you recall anything more than?
There was a few questions just around budgets as well, for how the dredging fund and endowment funds had been allocated and used to this point. And is that a continuation? Are we doing it every 2 years already with the fixed annuals? Just some of those key questions around budget and how much and how we have been doing things at the moment. That was going to come through, but it doesn't seem to be here.
Thank you. Councillor McCone and then Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, look, I've got questions along the similar line, but I totally agree with the decision objective at the bottom. I think that covers everything off for what we've got. Commercial businesses, we've got timber and Dunedin on each side of us. We're not big enough anymore, sadly. But items, the recommendation 4 and 5, where you're mentioning sums would be $80,000 in total. And I just bring to remind everybody we made that recommendation that we stick inside those budgets. So is that allocated from, is there a plus on top of that, or is it including what we've already talked about, or at the detriment of something else?
No, the purpose of those resolutions was purely to clarify how those items should be funded. So essentially from a non-rate funding source. So there is ongoing income from the Harbour Endowment Reserve. So the purpose of these resolutions to clarify funding only, not adjust the amount.
Just on timing, with it start this financial year, or is it going to be from the 1st of July?
Be from the 1st of July.
So it'll be into the next financial year anyway, and they'll be reflected in the budgets at that time. Councillor Hopkins.
Yes, 2 questions. First of them, in relation to resolution 2, talking about consideration of the removal of the commercial port status during the review and consultation for the coastal plan and navigation safety bylaw in 2025. Is that going to be done as part of the LTP, or is it going to be done separately? What's the time frame for that, please? And when are we likely to see a draft document for our consideration? And the other question I had, if we go to page 45 of our agenda, there's a photograph of a ship described below that apparently wanted to berth 35 times a year, 10% of the year, and they wanted to actually unload fresh ling, which I would have thought would have been quite a good commercial income for us and for the harbour. But apparently this vessel's use of the port was declined due to the public nature of the area and potential damage to the harbour entrance and Holmes Wharf. Can somebody amplify that? That seems to me to be disappointingly vague. And yeah,
Mr. Hope.
I'll have a crack at the first one, maybe the second one, and then so the coastal plan, that's nothing to do with our long-term plan nor the Otago Regional Council plan. It is a completely separate process. So we would make a submission to that. So essentially, the purpose of this resolution is to get council was to discuss us making essentially a submission to that process to change the status of the harbour. So because of the nature of the submission, it would come through council for approval before it went to the regional council, so we can pick up any additional work that was noted in the discussion at the Harbour Area Committee. It's moving away from commercial to more of a recreational harbour. It does not preclude commercial activity. Let's just say the predominant use is recreational, which is what is occurring in the harbour, and therefore allows some commercial activity at a lower level with smaller vessels. But it's like the balance of the focus is recreational activities. In terms of the other one, it pretty much gets to a straight business case. We are not set up for that. A vessel of that size with that level of activity using the wharf, because it would, when it's underway, there's a considerable number of health and safety issues that would almost preclude use by the public while that is going on, and potentially some setting up to exclude the public from areas on a permanent basis to actually properly manage the activity. It's a decent sized vessel unloading a large amount of cargo. It will need a lot of infrastructure on the wharf to actually permit that. So it's like, it would be a nice income stream, but you look at it and it's like, well, the cost would have to incur to allow that activity to occur doesn't actually justify it from it should be a purely commercial decision. And it just didn't justify it, even at a basic level of analysis. So that's why it was declined.
thank you.
Councillor Blackler.
Thanks, Mr. Hope. Could you just run us through what that basic level of analysis was, just at a high level, like the risk assessment around it and the costings and such like?
It's pretty much, this is the income that they would recover from it, and this is the amount of investment, and the two amounts were just so dissimilar that the payback period would be far too long, or the level of commitment from the person that was using it. So it was, like I said, very basic level of analysis, and it's like there was almost no way we could make it work.
Thank you. Okay, is someone prepared to move the recommendations? Councillor Holding, thank you. You're a seconder for that.
You do.
One through five. So, Councillor Holding, you have to move all of them to a seconder. Deputy Mayor Harley, thank you. Any discussion on that? Okay, sorry, you go for it.
Hope's explanation of we did the 2020 harbour plan. It's quite, even if that the community values recreation quite highly with the economic side and the environment side, it's probably a move where we can try and get to a good solution to balance all of those things in a sustainable way.
Thank you. Everyone else? I'll put it then. Those in favour, please say aye. And against? That is carried. Now we're on to 4.4, recommendations from the District Plan Review Subcommittee meeting held over many days. Held on the 14th of November, it says. So, Mr. Campbell, do you want to speak to this?
Thank you, Mayor Kircher. This is a fairly straightforward matter. It's really just dealing with the committee recommendations to council that are highlighted in red, hopefully by the governance advisor. It's just stressing that there is an appropriate process for providing feedback on the district plan that's notified. That's through submissions. And just noting that, the way it came in, we couldn't really do much with the material. It was basically recording a concern or opposition to much of the plan, but it didn't really set out the details that we have worked through with other people that have given feedback. So it was kind of a difficult one to be able to provide a response to. But it's basically saying if you are in opposition to certain things in the plan, the appropriate mechanism is provided once it's notified, and we can certainly let the petition organisers know through a letter and maybe highlight that process to them as well, so it's clear going forward what it means for them. Have you answered any questions?
Councillor McCain.
I think everybody knows where I sit on this, and I will not be supporting it at all. It doesn't address the petitioner's concerns. It doesn't give the opportunity to get around the table with representatives of those concerned to address their concerns, as opposed to using a bureaucratic process that may or may not be as cost effective, and perhaps will notify once notified, some will also become legally effective, which will override some of their concerns.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we need to understand or grasp the process here. We actually accepted or received the petition when it could have been declined because it didn't meet the criteria. The planning space requires an evidential based examination, and this response in places was emotive, and to simply say that you don't like something is not a reason for rejecting it. So going forward, the subcommittee is still working its way through the draft, which we hope to have to council before Christmas. So there's still further scrutiny to go, and the subcommittee consequently made this recommendation as the most expedient way to move the issue forward. And I will be voting in favour.
Okay, if it's not a question that will take mover, you happy to move that? Councillor Thompson, thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Linwood, thank you. Any further discussion on it? Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, look, just speaking to this, I can see how the people who signed the petition might feel that this is a suboptimal response. But in point of fact, I genuinely can't see how we could have dealt with it any other way. The number of people who signed the petition was relatively low. The concerns that they raised were extremely general in nature and legitimate from their point of view. Let's be clear about that. They had a perspective and a point of view that they articulated forcefully. But in terms of proposing amendments either to the draft plan or to solutions to the problems that they raised, the petition was relatively silent in that regard. And Councillor Thompson is absolutely right. The committee is indeed continuing, or the subcommittee is indeed continuing to work on endeavouring to panel beat and modify the plan in response to concerns raised and signals sent very clearly from Wellington that I rather wish the collective national planning community would embrace a little bit more willingly. But even in front of us today on this agenda, there's a resolution not to be voted on today, but that is a signal of the district plan review subcommittee's intention to continue to look at contentious areas of the plan. And for all of those reasons, I, along with Councillor Thompson, support the recommendations and will vote in favour.
Thank you. I guess for my 2 cents, it would be great if we could go out with a notified plan that was perfect, and that would be idyllic. But the reality is a bit different from that, and it just will not be as close to perfect as we might like, unfortunately. But there are a lot of reasons to get on with it. There is still a bit more to go in that process, and there are obviously the legal steps that people have. I want to make sure that we do all we can to minimise any cost to submitters as they go through that part of the process, particularly in respect of the submitter's own land. But that is part of the process, and we just have to manage that as best as we can. So it's noted there that I did abstain on the day. That was because I was travelling and I didn't hear all of the discussion and wasn't really able to vote. So I just asked for abstentions to be noted on all of the decisions made that day. It wasn't a position. It wasn't that I wasn't prepared to take a position on it. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Okay, I'm going to put it. Those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against?
Yes.
That's carried. Thank you very much. And I'll go to 5.1, adoption of the Waitaki identity and story. Mr. Farmer.
Just whilst Mel's taking her place, I just want to say, first of all, thanks to Mel and Sonia and their teams, and to Story Inc. and Ocean Design for the work that they put into this, and in particular the energy and passion, and I think the care for the district and its communities that they've put into this as well, to make sure that it fulfilled the brief. Just a bit of background around the origin of this. So in the Uplifting Waitaki Economic Development Strategy, it was identified that there was an opportunity to promote the district better to potential investors and businesses, and visitors, and also potential residents who would bring the skills that our businesses and our other services need. But in doing this, there was an opportunity to do it in an authentic way. So not just adopting a identity and brand, but something that was based on the story of the district and the people and the communities of the district as well. So you'll see in there the story, and I'd say it's probably the first iteration of this. It doesn't encapsulate everything that ever happened in the district. It encapsulates the essence of stories, and can be iterated and added to. I think when it comes to the identity and brand, it's important to say that, in any brand, whether it be a commercial company or a council, there are always detractors of what's being proposed. And I think when it comes to councils or other public services, there's probably more detractors out there who, whatever you put out there, are going to respond negatively to it. And so I think when we started the engagement, it was with some trepidation from my part as to how the community would respond. I personally didn't go to every event, but I know a lot of people who did. And whilst we couldn't say everyone was fully signed up, the overwhelming response was positive from those who engaged with us. But we need to recognise that not everyone engaged across the district in those events, but those that did were generally enthused by what they saw and supportive of it. And so I was pleased and surprised somewhat with the response that we got, including from people who are with a strong marketing and promotion background as well. I think personally the need is more apparent than ever to really look at how we promote the district to those potential investors and visitors. And so it's before you're here to adopt, so that we can get on with the work, if you do adopt it today, so we can start reaping the economic benefits for our district and communities from this.
Thank you. Mel, did you want to add anything?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Palmley. I will just update on the last group, because in fairness, the paper was submitted before the last of the 7 groups. And that was the only group where we did have a negative response. And that was really because there were some people who came into the room who did have preset agendas. Unfortunately, some of the people had pitched for the work and hadn't received it and came and shared their views about the work that was presented. So that made the last session, and I know Councillor Holding was in the session too, very difficult. Some people left immediately because there was some negativity right up front, and others really felt that they couldn't contribute as much. And so it was a shame because there were a lot of people in the room, but we've had probably less feedback from that group than from any of the others. What I would say though, just to reiterate what Mr. Powley was saying, overall, the response has been really positive, particularly to the story feedback. And we've had a lot of emails post the event saying, hey, that story really resonates. We really feel like you've understood what this district is all around. And particularly you've understood how the communities have impacted on how what has shaped our identity. The logo itself, the braided pattern, which has been really supported through the Runaka and Ross Hemera, who's a Ngaitaku artist, it really working well in bringing this whole braided journeys idea to life. So I think we're in a really interesting position now. I have put on the table a concept, and this is an early concept of how district signage might look. So you can see how the new font would work alongside the braided river pattern and the W logo, which we want to become the signifier, the little emblem, if you like, for the district. There's still, we've got a significant amount of really helpful feedback. Not least around the materials that we might use for our signage, and a real request from the community to say, hey, our environment is so important to us. So can we reflect on how we might bring more elements of the environment into the district signage and to the township signage? Even in Kakanui, it was where there was a great idea of, we're about to take a bridge down, can we use some of the posts from the bridge as part of our new signage? So all of that we now want to think about over the coming months. The work is now going to come in-house. So Sonia in the comms team is going to be taking on board all the feedback so that we can have iterated designs, and then we're looking to go back to the communities early in the new year. So yes, so there's sort of three elements to the decision today. It is adopting the basic thinking, the creative direction, but then it's also giving us permission to move on with looking at the implementation and doing a full costing on that and new concepts. And then the third element, and this did come up in the groups, people were getting a little bit confused with district logo and council logo. And I think, as we've talked before, the council logo feels it's ready for refreshing, and it doesn't feel like it fits very authentically now with our new position. There is quite a strong colonial influence in it. So the request is that again, in-house, we have a look at how we might better align that with the district logo.
Thank you very much. Right, councillors, any questions first of all? Okay, Councillor McCone.
Again, I'm going to sound like the Grit, but totally agree. The brand identity and everything can be done with existing resources. That's fine. But once we go outside that, then we're better start questioning what we're going to do.
Yeah, from a budgeting perspective, we've spent the money now getting to the position we're in today. We do now want to bring it in-house, and then in terms of funding going forward, we're looking at the reserves budgets that we've got, the amenity budgets, but we also have money in the visitor economy fund that we're looking to deploy against this, because this is a key part of it. Is not just community pride, but it's also about saying to our visitors, hey, welcome to the Waitaki District and our key townships.
Just on that, a couple of weeks ago, I think getting close to, before I got this report, I sent an email to Mr. Parnley just asking for consideration for a report to come to us to support the geopark, to help them through their current situation. And coincidentally, mentioning $300,000 as help to sustain them, not only for their operations, but actually make some progress on some of the geo sites. And yeah, it would be good to think that actually we can do help them, but also use some of the funding to help with signage because that's obviously a priority as well. But my concern is that if we allocate all of that funding, the geopark very well may not be here in a year, so there's no point putting them onto our signs or anything like that. We've spent a lot of money, both at council and in the community, to get the geopark to where it is. Spent a lot of time and effort, and there's been a lot of volunteer hours, and I want to make sure that we are in a position to for that to carry on and to thrive. And while we work on other revenue streams, that they haven't come to fruition yet, and it just needs to be a bit more time. So I just, as we go through this decision-making process today, I just want us to be mindful of that and think about how we actually do our best to make sure that the geopark survives and that there's a good progress made on town signage as one of those priorities. So that wasn't a question, but if we want it to be a question, it could be one to officers just saying, do you think that's possible?
And I think the recommendation here is to take this forward using existing resources. I think it doesn't specify in the recommendation around those tourism resources, but it does mention those as the in the body of the report. I think we need to look at that and consider what our other existing resources are for both that could be allocated to geopark and could be allocated to this, and bring that back to you in terms of the options and further discussion. We have got the ability to potentially bring something forward to the December council meeting. We've obviously had other requests for funding as well from other bodies to support them that aren't currently in the long-term plan. We've also got the review that we committed to do of the programme within this year to fit within the borrowing limits that you set, and that was due to come forward to the December meeting as well. So we could address those through those items coming to December meeting. That helps.
Mm-hmm.
That answers the sort of question.
I definitely heard in there a commitment of some funds to geopark.
Just say that would be for the council to decide. I think that's authority.
Commitment to recommend. We'll see how
that was one of the reasons why I put that design on the desks here, because we're very conscious that for the geopark to retain its UNESCO global status, it needs to be signposted. So that's and I think it works really well as a design there. So, and certainly the geopark team our general manager is comfortable with where we've got to with that. So hopefully we're supporting whichever way we split the funds, the geopark is still getting the benefit.
Yeah. Just reiterate, it's if they haven't got enough to survive, putting them on the sign isn't going to do that. That's all. Councillor Wright, thank you.
Thank you. And I guess there's been discussion about each township having its local flavour. Did you get enough feedback from the community conversations? I guess too, there's obviously going to be final designs shared with the community, but does there need to be more comms on that, or did you get enough feedback in that space for those?
I think there's a huge amount of work to do there. I'll be absolutely honest. Lisa's shaking her head, nodding her head. There was a lot of feedback and a lot of different feedback. Sonia's creative brain is buzzing, and she said she's got ideas, but we're just going to have to play and look at different options. There was some feedback. We love photos, other feedback, and this problem is it's always polarizing. Some love photos, some hate photos. Some want an icon, some don't want icons. Some just want something very natural and simple. Others don't. So we're going to have to just think smartly about it. Certainly, we're keen also to look at the natural elements. I mean, interestingly, from a geopark perspective, one idea that came up from Hampden was, could we have a plesiosaur, because that was found on our beach a while ago, and that could be a beautiful way to integrate geopark messaging. So there's an awful lot we've got to think about, and we will be coming back to elected members to show you where we're getting to. But I think it's exciting because the community want to share their stories with us. And share their thinking with us, and we're going to encourage that. We will be putting a page up on the website to enable more people to put their thoughts up there.
And I think it's like the logos themselves, you know, you're not going to keep everyone happy, and at some point you just got to push the go button and make it happen. And I think most people will just be pleased to see something there that looks a lot better than what's currently there. So yeah, let's stay fixed on that focus. Mrs. Bailey.
Thank you. I just wanted to reiterate and further answer Councillor Ryan's questions. There were some fantastic ideas that came through those sessions. I had the pleasure of going to most of them, and not just on the signage, but also the taglines and the ways to be able to introduce the flavours of each of our townships into the whole story. So the teams at each of the sessions, although we had, you know, small numbers at each, there was really good engagement watching a few of them actually get quite emotional when they listen to the story, when they saw the designs. And obviously there's a lot of different people, different views. Not everyone's going to love everything. We have to be a little bit careful that we don't just keep going backwards and forwards with further engagement and getting more ideas and not actually getting there. And as Mel said, in terms of being able to have feedback through a website, there's the engagement that's gone in with those communities is great. And also to reiterate the earlier comments, just really thanking the ED team and the comms and engagement team, because there's been a tremendous amount of work that's gone into this so far and a lot to go.
Thank you. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, look, just one very simple question for the moment. This negative meeting that you talked about, where was it and when?
Sorry, it was last week in the Opera House.
How many people were there?
37.
Right. And how many of those were negative?
Well, I didn't count them up, but there was very loud noise. Yeah,
I wasn't there, but from what I hear, there were groups that came to oppose, as opposed to coming. Most of the meetings, I went to several other meetings, and most people just came along to see what was happening and see the background to it and give some feedback and so on, and quite open. But I think from what I hear, this was quite a different meeting to that.
Yeah. And there was, I would say, there was a contingent from Waitaki who were concerned they hadn't been involved in the development, and we're picking that up with Runaka. So there's a separate conversation.
Yeah, it needs to be a discussion between them and the Runaka. Right, any other questions? Okay, someone happy to move something, Councillor Hopkins?
I'm happy to move all three, but I'll move 2A with a very minor change that I don't think is controversial. Commence implementation of the brand identity with existing resources, prioritising the refresh of district entry signage and township signage from 2025, subject to local engagement, and. So the word subject to local engagement would be added after the date 2025. Speaking very briefly to that, it just picks up what Councillor Ryan was saying, that people are going to have, it formalises the process of engagement, that's all.
Councillor Ryan. Okay. Yeah, I guess it's, yeah, there has been engagement. It depends on how much more engagement we have and how much, yeah, whether it's actually just taking a design back and saying, right, yeah, feedback on that. But hopefully officers can take that on board and do something as efficiently as possible. Councillor McCain. And then Councillor Ryan.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm happy to support it, but I think we need to, the signs that are currently there are abysmal and they're also embarrassing. And I think we need to tidy that up. The transit signs have more influence than we do at the minute about our towns, and we need to sell ourselves a bit better than we are. But and it's also funded. The funding is allowable or there right now, so we use it. But after that, I think we need to have a look at where we're going from there.
Thank you. Just say some of NZTA's the tourism sign, the brown signs, some of them are very abysmal as well, to be fair. I'm not sure who's responsible for them, but we won't get too distracted onto that. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you. Oh, look, I just wanted to say I'm really excited about this project and the refresh of our district's branding. It's really hard when there's so many great things about the Waitaki district to bring them all together and create that branding. And, you know, there's absolutely different areas that people are really passionate about, and that's why it's so difficult to bring the essence all together. So I'm really excited about what's happened here. The workshop that I attended, there was just such great attendance from such a wide group of people, and there was some great debate and discussions happened, and based on some of those discussions, you know, elements have changed, and so it's fantastic that they've been taken on board. I don't come away from a lot of council meetings and engagement feeling energised and excited, but that was one that I really did, and so I'm just really excited about where this can go. Yeah, it's interesting that everyone sort of becomes design experts, you know, when we do projects like this. But look, yeah, congratulations to the team. I think the engagement's been great. The feedback has been, and yeah, I'm just really excited to see where we go from here.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate that too. Some really good positive feedback. I was expecting a whole mix, but actually, you know, most of the stuff was very positive, and including the Oda Matata one, where we did have what appeared to be a couple of design experts. There were certainly people who knew their way around logos and slogans and various things, and they were, you know, quite blown away with what the story behind the logo and various things. And yeah, no, I think it's great. It's yeah, we're not kicking out Victoriana, as has been stated in social media. I think this is something that does need to umbrella a whole lot of things. As Councillor Ryan has said, we've got so many things that we've are good about the Waitaki district, and we need something that can umbrella all of those. I think this does. The previous previous graphics and so forth had a very much a Victorian slant to them with font and things. This is standing out from all of that, and it can be used as easily with Victoriana as it can be with geology, as it can be with yeah, our wildlife. All those things can be utilised under this umbrella very well. So I think it's very positive, it's fresh, and it's going to be something that you know, will stand the test of time. We'll use that one over the next decade or two. So well done to staff on getting us to this point. It's been good, and the public engagement's been great. Councillor Hopkins.
Yes, I would absolutely and unequivocally echo the comments and sentiments both of yourself and of Councillor Ryan. The meetings I was at were energised and energising, and people engaged with passion and conviction and commitment, all of which are very positive signs, both for the future of this and also for the quality of the material put in front of people. I would make a couple of comments to officers. Some people have asked, well, actually, no, sorry, one person yesterday questioned me about the logo, the W, and I think they have seen this as an image, simply, let's say, as a logo on a plain background, and that has caused concern. And I think we need to be very clear that these graphic components are going to be incorporated with photographic imagery and, you know, material that complements and enhances the graphics. And I would send a very clear signal that the plainer the town entry signage is, the less likely it is to be absolutely enthusiastically endorsed. The other thing is, I do think we do have to bear in mind, I think that the braided river motifs are arguably more geographically appropriate in the northern portions of the district than the southern areas where the braided rivers have disappeared. And that's just, I think that's another little matter to be filed away and taken into account in the development of imagery. And finally, I'm mildly disappointed to hear that we're troubled that our logo or brand is guilty of quote unquote colonialism. Now, I would have thought, oddly enough, that the architectural motifs incorporated in our district council brand actually link us internationally to a range of cultures and histories, philosophies and behaviours that have been enormously influential in creating and shaping modern New Zealand. Our architecture here links us with Greek philosophy, Roman law, the Judeo-Christian religious traditions of the Mediterranean, articulated subsequently in church architecture and the like. And these are all elements that have helped very positively to contribute to New Zealand's character and moral essence. So I'm not absolutely sure that simply saying the logo is guilty of colonialism is an adequately cogent reason to eliminate it completely. Now, I do think there are positive components in the character of the town and the way the design reflects that character that should not necessarily be casually discarded.
I think that, like I said, you know, this brand can be used with all of that, and you know what that all of that doesn't speak to is actually our presence in the Pacific and everything that's Pacifica, and that's a very important part too that we need to move on and evolve and grow into as well. Deputy Mayor Haradali.
Thank you through the chair. I just wanted to reflect on Councillor Hopkins' comments. I don't think the comments around colonialism was intended as a negative thing. It is part of our history. It is part of our heritage of this country. But also, I think the new branding and what it represents is where we are as a community moving forward and what we can actually look forward to in the future. And that is a whole mixture of acknowledging our mana whenua, the history of this land and this country, but also the opportunities it presents for the migrants that have chosen Waitaki as their home. So fully supportive of this, but also just wanting to acknowledge just your comments, but don't be afraid, don't be fearful of what the future holds. We should be excited of this. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. With that, I'm going to put it those in favour, please say aye. Those against. Those carried. Thank you very much, and once again, thanks to the team and yeah, I think the consultants have done a good job. So please pass on our thanks to them. Okay, councillors. I allowed that to go on a little bit longer than probably should have, but we can keep the rest of the agenda as tight as we reasonably can. We'll see how we go. 5.2, we're not going to be discussing today the dog control policy, and the dog bylaw will come back to us on the 17th of December. So we would now go to 5.3, the approval of the Dog Control Act's report for the year ending, legal obligation of staff have to do every year. So Mr. Bardsley and Mr. Hope, over to you.
Thank you through the chair. Good morning, councillors, and you've introduced the paper beautifully. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Stolen my thunder. So better word. Mr. Hope has compiled the report and would be happy to answer any questions in regards to it.
Thank you. Councillors, any questions?
I did have one more question. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to find the page. Page 147 of our agenda. Yes, under community safety, second paragraph, the number of dogs classified as menacing under section 33A of the Act, and the number of dog owners disqualified from dog ownership, each increased by 100%. My question is, what are the actual numbers, and would it be helpful, I think, would it be helpful for those actual numbers rather than the percentage increase to be included in the report? Yeah.
Thank you. The number of disqualified owners and dogs classified as menacing in section 33A is further down the report on page. I'll just find that for you now. It's on page
151,
152, 52.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So it is documented down there.
Thank you for that. I'm sorry, I missed that. I think it would be helpful, however, if those numbers, by all means, reiterate them under the heading of hearings on that page, but I think it would be helpful if those numbers were included in the information under community safety area as well.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, someone like to move? We accept this. Councillor Cowles, seconded by Councillor Linwood. Thank you. Any discussion on it? Okay, gonna be nice and easy. Those in favour, please say aye. Aye. And those against, that is carried. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Hope you enjoyed the discussion on the Waitaki branding. No, I note that they were sitting there during that and got to enjoy all of that, and their item was relatively short. Okay, thank you. So now we move. We've got local government New Zealand representatives joining us at 10:30 after morning tea. So we now go to item 5.5, Beach Road, the future of, and welcome back to the table, Mr. Rendell. Who will speak to this. Just note, councillors, we got some extra information on that, and are we doing that as part of this agenda item? So the first part of the agenda addendum is whether to resolve to accept or decline. Would someone like to move one or the other? Councillor McCone, moving to accept. Councillor Hopkins, seconding that. Okay, any discussion? Those in favour, please say aye. Those against, that's carried. So that's part of the agenda as well. Now, Mr. Rendell, hand to you.
Thank you very much, and good morning. Beach Road North is currently closed to traffic between 2 points. That's changed 2.2, or what is colloquially known as 14th Beach, a beach via the 14th hole of the golf course, and change 4.6, which is the bridge over Almoa Creek, which is just nearby the Old Bones Lodge there. This is due to works on Project Reclaim. Project Reclaim involved the removal of historic waste, dumping subject to coastal erosion in Hampden and along Beach Road North, and has resulted in the severance of Beach Road North at 2 locations. It was hoped that there may be sufficient budget within Project Reclaim to have the road reinstated as part of the project, but the finding of additional waste necessitated the use of the contingency of the project, so that we weren't able to reopen Beach Road North within the project budget. The scope of Project Reclaim never included the re-establishment of Beach Road North. That was always something that was going to be dealt with outside of the project itself. There was hope that through some of the savings that were identified through the project, that we might have enough to reopen the road at that time. Within my report, you'll see some statements regarding the use of Beach Road North that's currently closed. There's 2 aspects that I'd like to cover now. The route between Waimaru and Kakanui that goes along Beach Road North that's currently closed is not the most expedient route. It's not the fastest. It goes through large areas of residential space in the same manner that the other route through Thousand Acre Road and Almoa Road also does. As such, its reopening isn't considered a matter of roading efficiency, but of amenity. Beach Road North is also prone to erosion. The threat to the road is increasing as we experience more significant storm events that are of an increased frequency. In developing its consultation document for the long-term plan, Council had intended to consult the community on the approach to coastal roads, such as Beach Road North, and whether it would be most appropriate for Council to invest in protecting these assets or take a managed retreat approach. The options that were intended to be consulted upon, including an open and functioning Beach Road North, which is not currently the situation, hence this discussion. An estimate of the cost to realign Beach Road North has been added in an addendum report. Thank you very much for accepting that. My apologies for the lateness of it. I know it doesn't give you a lot of time to consider the options in totality with all of the information that's required. We received the schedule of quantities from the surveyors yesterday, so prepare to a cost estimate around 4 o'clock. So apologies for the lateness, but it is a just-in-time situation. I presented some options today for your consideration. Given the long-term issues of erosion on a purely infrastructure assessment, I'd be recommending that it be closed. If you just look at the economics of it, in the long term, it's going to cost a lot of money to keep the road open. But the issue isn't necessarily one of efficiency or economics. It's an issue of aesthetics and amenity for the community, where, you know, it's well known that people do enjoy that drive. It's been lauded as a fantastic coastal drive that's, you know, we're having reduced numbers of those throughout New Zealand. As such, the recommendation that I've provided here is to consult with the community on whether we reinstate the road or not, because it becomes a community sentiment issue rather than an infrastructure issue. Happy to take any questions, but yeah.
Thank you, Josh, and just note, for those who noticed the noise, that was just the rescue helicopter heading over and landing by the hospital. Who had their hand up? Councillor Holding.
Just to be clear, the way I read it, are we deciding the future today, or are we going to community? Because that's supplementary.
Through the chair, that is up to you. I've presented some options there in terms of we could potentially reinstate the road now based on the cost estimates that have been provided. I would need an allocation of budget to be able to do that. We could make a decision now to permanently close. We could make a decision to open a portion of, or we could consult with the community on what it wants to do for the long term.
Thank you. So the consulting part is not a commitment either way at this point. Okay. Just supplementary to that, when do we have an answer, or do we already have an answer just around the waste levy, and what will that mean to a budget for that project?
Through the chair, I don't yet have an answer on whether we'll receive any funds back from the waste levy or not. From my understanding, the amount that we've currently paid in the waste levy is approximately $2 million. I'm not sure whether we'll receive that back or not.
So just to clarify that, we haven't actually formally paid it over. We're still holding on to those monies. The indications are positive, but we're yet to receive formal confirmation that we don't have to pay that money over. So we're still waiting on Wellington.
Yeah, it's, I think, technically in dispute to allow us so that we don't have to pay it right straight away. Councillor Ryan, and then Councillor Blackland.
Thank you. I totally accept that there's like an emotional attachment that a lot of people have to this road, but I'm just wondering, like, there are some key landowners in that area, and it was brought to our attention that they haven't had a lot of recent engagement from the council. I was just wondering why that hasn't happened. I guess if we're being asked to potentially make quite a big decision today, why that engagement hasn't happened.
Through you, Mr. Chair. The landowners would consult, would talk to a great deal through the Project Reclaim project itself. We didn't necessarily envisage that we'd be in the position that we're currently in. And without, I suppose, a formal decision from council one way or the other on which way we want to go, we then haven't gone and engaged with the community on what that option might be. At the moment, there's no legal requirement for us to reinstate the road. There's no one's legal access directly off Beach Road North. It may have some impact on future plans that some of those landowners may or may not have for their land. We're generally not in a position where we can undertake a lot of consultation with people before we make infrastructure decisions. We generally do it on an infrastructure assessment rather than necessarily on a public sentiment perspective. I suppose that's the element that we believe that you bring to the table.
Councillor Blackler, and then Councillor Percival and Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Just with regards to the question around the waste levy and where the budget is landed overall, if we take the 2 million levy out and consider the 7,000 tonnes additional, so am I right in saying we've basically mined out 67,000 tonnes rather than about 60,000 budgeted total between Hamden and Beach Road. If we take that into consideration, the additional costs incurred there, where does the budget land with that additional impact?
My apologies, I don't have the information on the budget spend for Project Reclaim. What I would say is that Project Reclaim was all money that was to be borrowed to be able to expend funds in aid of that effort. If there were to be any savings from Project Reclaim, we essentially wouldn't draw down as significant a loan as what we would have had to otherwise. So probably irrespective of where that budget lands, it's now up to council to decide whether it wants to lend to reopen Beach Road or not. They may look as though they're savings for us coming under budget in terms of Project Reclaim, but either way, it's borrowings and it's an investment in infrastructure the council's making.
And so supplementary, just further to the budget and then interrelationships with infrastructure around our decision making here. What would be the time frame until like the anticipated year that we might need to look at rerouting the sewer line along the road there if we don't undertake coastal mitigation?
So the approximate location of the water and wastewater main that travel to Kakanui and then back from Kakanui, they're approximately 20 to 30 metres back from the current erosion points. With I think the current rate of erosion being approximately half a metre, we're looking at between 50 and 60 years, depending on where it is, maybe 40 to 60 years. Expected life of those pipes would be around 70 years. They've been in place for approximately 10 to 15 from memory. So they wouldn't quite meet their end of useful life, but they'd be fairly close.
Councillor Percival.
Yeah, Josh, if we were to decide to reinstate the road, would it qualify for NZTA subsidy? That's the first question. Second question, the traffic counts, I can't find it in here. I've got obviously the counts, but when were they taken? Middle of winter? High summer? I mean, it's all relevant to what the traffic counts are as when it was taken.
To answer your first question regarding subsidy from NZTA, the realignment of the road, I'm not sure whether we would qualify for a subsidy for that. I don't believe so. However, the continued stabilisation of the road, quite possibly, yes. Yeah, we have just received some additional funding that'll be put into next year's budgets for coastal road. What's the right word? Not armouring. It's resilience, coastal road resilience. And at the moment, the scope of that is a little bit broad as to whether it's in support of managed retreat or in support of armouring or in support of other geotechnical solutions that might mean that the road remains open as long as it could be. The value of that is not sufficient to undertake the armouring that would be required. It's, well, don't quote me on the number, but I think approximately $1.5 million, 1.3. Yeah, so there's potential for some assistance in retaining the road being open, but I don't believe the reopening of the road itself would be qualified for subsidy. The second question in terms of the traffic counts, I don't actually have the information on when those were undertaken. My apologies. So in terms of any seasonal patterns of traffic, I can't really comment. I've probably taken it as if it's a commuter line as opposed to a seasonal use.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the information that's in front of us, and I don't want to be negative, but I've got to raise, you're talking about us handling the engagement is like passing me the ball after I've been hit by the tackler, because at the start of this project, I emailed the then roading manager and Mr. Clark and asked, could I be kept up to speed as chair of the roading subcommittee so that I could talk with these locals. And I've received absolutely no information. So we've now got locals questioning what we're up to because the agenda said we were making a decision today. It's just a cart before the horse. And I don't want to appear as if it's about me, but I did get 2,500 likes for my opera appearance in the hole.
Just goes to show how much spare time people have got on their hands, doesn't it? No, it was Oscar worthy or Emmy worthy. Josh.
I'll concede that that's absolutely the case. Well, we probably haven't communicated as well as what we should have throughout the entire project. That is another reason why I suppose I'm recommending that we consult with the community, because we haven't gotten to hear the collective voice of the community as yet. So I do believe that that is important in whatever decision we make moving forward.
Councillor Cone, then Councillor Hopkins.
Thank you, Josh, and appreciate you being under a bit of pressure to get some of those figures out. From a straight up practical and financial point of view, you won't be surprised. I don't think we've got too many options personally. We do know that nature never sleeps. It works 24/7, and that is a piece of coastline that is under pressure. And I just wonder the cost of reinstating it and the cost of armouring it and the unknown costs that we do have in there, maybe better put towards realigning or doing something else to protect further infrastructure further inland. I know it's a shame and it's a motive that, it's a beautiful part of the countryside to drive around, but is it worth that cost?
Thank you. Councillor Hopkins.
Mayor Ketchum, with your permission, I'll move the two recommendations we have in front of us and a third, if I may. The first two stand as they are. The third will read that consultation with the community will include clear design options and cost information. So I'm moving 1 and 2 as they are in our paper, and 3 additionally.
That would make number 4 that was receiving and noting the late additional information.
I thought we already voted on it.
No, we agreed to have the report in,
Okay.
and that's the recommendation in the report itself.
Will we move that to so that it's actually accepted when we do the decisions?
As the governance advisor says, let's deal with that one first, perhaps. So, are you happy to move that recommendation on the agenda addendum?
Yes,
thank you. And seconded. Councillor Linwood, thank you. Those in favour, please say aye. And against, it's carried. So, coming back now to what you were moving. So that's moved what's there plus the extra, and Councillor Blackford seconding that. Speaking to that, and then Councillor McCone.
All right. If I may speak to it very quickly, it would be premature in my view for us to make a decision today to either commit to reopening or to closing the road. As has been acknowledged on numerous occasions, and indeed in this report, these roads generate a lot of energy, intensity and feeling, and there are strong views either way that I think are ideally suited to genuine community engagement. I think the cost options put in front of us in the late report, that the rehabilitation or reinstatement of the total road, I think, is estimated to cost 720,000. And the rehabilitation using Awamoa Central Road and realigning the corner at only 350, well, at 300, in fact, it is described in the report as only 353,000. That's costs and information that I think people are entitled to consider, and options that they can also signal to us very clearly as to which is their preference, unless alternatively their preference is to close altogether. I would just make it one other very quick point. I've been on this council for quite some time now, and I remember more than 10 years ago, Neil Jorgensen, who was then assets manager, bringing to us reports about this northern area of the coast road and how it was an immediate risk of effectively being lost completely. And we invested quite an amount of money in some hotspots where erosion was of a particularly severe nature at that time. What is fascinating about waters and coastlines and geography is that those predictions of concern have largely not come to pass, and the erosion issues along the coast have occurred elsewhere. And in recent times, that northern section of the beach road has been pretty stable. The estimates referenced in the report, the first report, range from 2,500,000 to 11 million over a 50-year period. Just calculating the 2,500,000 estimate, that would amount over 50 years to 50,000 a year, which is what we've got for erosion protection at the moment anyway. So I simply make the point that the replacement of this road with an alternative route isn't a zero-sum game. It would involve quite substantial capital investments in itself. So, you know, those are all matters that I think warrant consideration by us, but also they are matters that I think the community is entitled to express a view on.
Thank you, Councillor McCone.
Yeah, look, I agree the community's got to be involved in this, but the figures that we're giving them, does that include perhaps we need battering along the seashore to build the road up on the side? Do we have to buy some land to move the truck onto? How much are we sort of looking at to reinforce where we're going? So what I'm trying to say, what is the total projected annual cost, or cost to firstly in reinstatement, then the projected annual cost to actually keep it going? So going back to your motion that you're passing, Jim, is that number you're going to use for the road only, or is it the whole 10 yards, 9 yards?
So look, you know, what I think the message to officers is, if we agree to consult with the community, we've got to set the context for this decision. It's not just about this wee bit of road. What's the longer term future of the rest of the road and the various aspects of that? So I think those are all parts that we need to paint that picture very well, because they're all part of our consideration, and they should be part of the consideration that the community uses to give us feedback. So thank you. Councillor Holding.
I was just going to raise that coastal erosion, the work that we've had done on that is already a topic that we wanted to consult with the community on the long-term plan. So it's, how do we pull, maybe it's a good opportunity to just pull some of those bits out with the road as part of that. Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, happy to support this, and looking forward to the consultation with the community as part of the long-term plan. I just really wanted to emphasise, I think, the importance of that engagement, even if it's not a requirement, you know, to be talking to like the landowners. Here's a situation where we've sort of got 2 to 3 key landowners affected, and surely we can just, you know, give them a call and say, hey, this is coming before council, before they have to read about it in a media release or, you know, through other people. So just, it seems like the right thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Okay, I'll put it. Those in favour of 1, 2 and 3, please say aye. Aye. And against, those carried. We're going to have a break for about 10 minutes, and then we need to come back. We've got Local Government New Zealand representatives joining us to talk about their full monthly report. So pause for now and be back in 10 minutes. Thank you. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Right, we're going to item 5.4, which is the Local Government New Zealand 4-monthly report. This is a report that gets emailed out to councils around the country, and we have an opportunity to obviously put it in our agenda, but also to have representatives join us from LGNZ. Today, we're lucky enough to have Ranjani Ponachiti and Harriet Shelton. So welcome to you both. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us. Happy to hand over to you for you to introduce the report, talk about any of the highlights and aspects that you want to, and then hopefully take any nice, easy questions.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for giving us this opportunity. I'm Ranjani Ponachiti, as you've already mentioned. I'm Chief Advisor at Local Government New Zealand. I oversee government relations and media strategies. I'd like to just introduce you to Harriet Shelton. She's our Director of Advocacy and Strategic Partnerships. She's about 2 and a bit months into the role, so you know, bear with us. Our President, I know that our President Sam Broughton and Deputy Chief Executive Scott Necklin have just recently visited you, so I'm sure you'll be across all the work that we're doing and have no questions at all, but I'll just pick a couple of highlights from my area and then hand it over to Harriet, who can talk through a couple of key policy areas. So in the 4-month period, we've met with the Prime Minister and the Minister of Local Government, and we've shared some practical ways we can cut out red tape and reduce cost to council. So we are looking to make further progress on that work when we meet with them again next month. And from a media perspective, we've certainly used media as a key tool for our advocacy. We've raised issues such as unfunded mandates, which our Vice President had talked to. And we've also, through media, we've ensured we were giving communities the right information and data as they receive their new rate bills around July, August, and early September. So look, those are the kind of 2 key things that I wanted to highlight, and Harriet will have a few more from a policy perspective.
Kia ora koutou, nice to meet you all. I can only see a little bit on my screen, but I can certainly see Gary. So hello, Gary. Nice to meet you, Mayor Kirker. I am relatively new to the organisation. I'll just give you a bit of a summary of what we've done in the last few months. And then I'm obviously quite happy to talk about things that are also coming up for us as well in the next few months. It's going to be a bit of a busy time. We launched our 3rd Rates Rise Toolkit in July. So that was quite a few months ago now. We shared some research that NZIER had done into the costs of unfunded mandates for councils. This is an ongoing issue, as you know, and local government continues to get a lot of costs given to us as a result of central government legislation, and we're still seeing that happening at the moment. So, but hopefully those rates rises toolkits give you some resources that you can work help to work with your communities. We've also launched the issues paper recently that's come from the Electoral Reform Working Group, looking at the way that voters participate in local elections, and suggesting some improvements. And so we're asking for feedback on that issues paper. We've also been quite heavily involved with providing advice on regional deals, and got some good announcements that aligned with our position back in August. We've now, of course, had further announcements from the Minister about the regional deals. It just goes to show just how quickly this environment changes, and that we will just endeavour to keep up with those changes in policy that the government releases. Water, of course, is another ongoing policy area for us, and we've got a big bill, of course, coming around the corner, and we will be preparing a series of submissions on that work as well, along with the local government reforms work that we're also expecting before Christmas, the first bill on that, and then also resource management reform. We have a very large amount of work that's going to be coming out of central government in the next few weeks on that one as well. So that's just a nutshell of some of the things that we're doing in the policy space.
Thank you very much to you both. Just looking for questions. So, Councillor Holding.
Good morning to you both. Just a question. It's quite an interesting topic around the unfunded mandates, and just it's a funny message to try and get to the communities. It sort of sounds like finger pointing, the blame game. But just with the rate rises around the country, what in your study, what sort of percentage did you have a figure of what the unfunded mandates is on the effect it has on the local authorities' OPEX?
No.
To that, Harriet, or?
No, we don't. But we are in the process of getting that information. It does vary from council to council, so we need to be able to take all of as much data as we can and actually create an average. But I think it's something that we would like to be able to produce probably early next year.
It's quite a tricky piece of work because it's you know, to your point, it's interesting, but it's quite hard to kind of quantify because it gets absorbed into council operational costs. I mean, governments make decisions that councils have to bear and enact. So there is actually no real budget line that looks at that, but there are kind of new things that are coming on board which we can kind of carve out and quantify it that way. So we're looking at ways we can capture that data in a stronger way, but there is analysis that points to the fact that certainly adds pressure, and pressure that councils aren't, you know, able to prepare for, because at a whim of a change of government, it impacts you, right? Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you. Not a question, just a comment. I was lucky enough to attend both of the young elected members events that have been highlighted in the report, and everyone around this table is probably sick of me talking about it, but I just wanted to highlight and I know Ranjani, you're well aware of this, but the young elected member network is just so important. The Hui in Christchurch, I've come away from that just with a bit of a renewed sense of optimism and hope about what's possible. And that's a gift that the YEM space has given me that I haven't been able to find anywhere else. A lot of that, I guess, comes from the intent that everyone as individuals brings, but I just wanted to say thank you for supporting that network and the work that goes on in that space.
Thank you. The beauty of that network is that it's actually massively led by the young elected members themselves. So thank you for your work in that space.
Indeed. Now to one of the OEMs, Councillor Hopkins.
No, excuse me.
So O for awesome.
I am YAHEN, young at heart, elected member, and will forever be so. And unless and until my faculties absolutely evaporate.
Okay, we're wondering now.
Well, no, it's ageism. LGNZ, I do apologise that you have been exposed to this brutality and workplace harassment. I have two questions. Question number one, we were at that, a number of us, Gary and I and Alex, were at your meeting last week in Wellington, which I thought was extremely helpful, and you had a very good range of speakers. One of the things that was mooted was regional deals. And it's been suggested to me that the government is seeking to kind of connect a willingness to engage in regional deals with a willingness on the part of councils in regions to enter into collective or joint agreements regarding water. Does LGNZ see that connection? Is that, in your view, a sort of a hint, a nudge that central government is giving us? The other question I have, on page 163 of our agenda, you talk about how there are various groups or a couple of councils that are investigating the implications of challenging the government edict to conduct a binding poll regarding Maori wards. In other words, there are some councils actually seeking a legal view on that. Apropos of another issue that's much more significant for us down here, fluoridation. There's also a suggestion that some councils may be considering going to the court to seek an interim injunction until HNZ actually produces this report that is the basis of its decision. Are you aware of any councils actually doing that collectively? And or has LGNZ considered possibly seeking an interim injunction on that matter on behalf of member councils?
Harriet, I can speak to the fluoridation issue if you like.
Yeah, sure. So shall I just begin with the first question? Yeah. Thank you very much for that question. Those two questions. Yes, so yes, we are seeing the connections between those messages that we're getting from central government about regional deals and about water. It's not only those two areas, of course, it's also resource management reform, where we're seeing proposals to have a different level of planning being done at the regional level rather than district or city level. And we'll see some more details of that quite soon. Also, the building consent reforms, so proposals coming out about whether we would see a benefit in having some more regionalisation of building consent authorities. So this is definitely happening in a whole lot of different areas at the same time. And so it is a bit of a theme that, you know, clearly the minister's looking for, well, not just the minister, the central government as a whole is looking for more cooperation and, you know, joining up of services between councils. Now, some of that already happens anyway. And it's just really just a matter of to what extent this is likely to happen. So we are really mindful of what this really means for local government, and you're not the only ones to raise this issue. It's certainly been mentioned by a lot of members that they're quite concerned that this is happening. But at the moment, we are having to respond specifically to these specific proposals that are happening right now. But I think in the longer term, National Council is probably going to have a bit of a discussion about how we want to approach this at a more strategic level, that whole organisation of local government. Hard to give you much more of a definitive answer at the moment.
Thank you. And in terms of the fluoridation work, no, we are not looking at getting any legal advice or opinion on that issue. Since it was handed over to the Ministry of Health, you know, it is deemed as a health issue. We are aware of one or two councils. Well, they haven't reported to us, but we have heard that one or two councils are looking into it and seeking, you know, some legal advice around it, but we're certainly not involved because it's not a national issue. That's helpful.
Can I ask one more question? Look, one very, very quickly, the electoral reform working group that you talk about, chaired by Nick Smith. I think this is a really, really important thing for us. And my own view is that the sooner it's handed over to the Electoral Commission and people vote on the basis of the electoral roll of the general election, the better. But my question really is, from mid-October to 5 January, we will seek feedback on the paper from members. So have you sought feedback specifically from us and perhaps to our officers? Have we formed a position? Do we have any feedback to give local government New Zealand on this matter? Because I think it's very critical. I really do. For us and for all councils.
We would love to hear your feedback.
But it has to be before the 5th of January, which is, it doesn't give us a lot of time between now and then, does it?
Is it the 5th of January?
That's what it's saying in the report.
Okay, I think it's the 19th of January. It's on the website. So
I think just to answer Councillor Hopkins, I think you know, it definitely is something we should be submitting on. I think we've all going to have you know, opinions on this, but the work that the panel's done has been excellent. There's some of the suggestions are very good, and the research behind it has been very good. So I'd certainly like to make sure that we do submit. So yeah, we'll.
There's a
try
really
and
concise
prioritise that.
document for submission on the website. So yeah, that, and as well there will be another opportunity to submit once there's a draft position paper. So you'll get 2 bites at the cherry.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say, that this is not the first and only opportunity.
We certainly want to support the work that's been done, I'm sure. So thank you on that. Councillor Blackler.
Thank you. I just had a question that probably falls under the area of water services reform or the unfunded mandates advocacy work. And I just wondered what work LGNZ is doing in that space around specific modelling to show the spread or range of impact on households across the country in relation to their affordability and cost pressures with the water services reform.
We're not doing any specific modelling ourselves, but we do know that lots and lots of councils are doing their own modelling. What would be probably the most useful thing to do is for us to capture all of that information and actually put it all together so you can actually see the broader picture. That's something that we can do, because we can obviously ask other councils to share that with us. So I think we're probably about getting to that right time where there's enough work that's now been done, because I know that a lot of that is actually happening right now. A lot of the councils are actually doing their own analysis, and I think probably over the next couple of months, that's when we want to actually start capturing it all together. So I will take that back and just check in with the team, my team, that's leading on that policy work.
Yeah, thank you. I think bringing about some awareness of the magnitude of the potential problem for particularly smaller communities. I would hope that central government is already aware of the impact that these communities are going to feel, but I definitely see it as an important role that you guys could play in bringing that to light.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Tim. And this is actually a conversation we'll follow up with National Council, so we'll have an update in the next 4-monthly report.
Thank you. Next we got, I'm sure it's Councillor Linwood or Youth Councillor Koa to ask the next one.
Thank you. Good morning, Anjani and Harriet. Going back to the electoral reform working group and following on from what Councillor Hopkins said, how does LGNZ plan on using the findings and feedback on the issues paper once it's been launched at Superlocal? Will that be up to each individual council, or will it be driven by you guys?
Harriet, do you want to speak?
And you got your mouth open.
No. This is, the whole point of this electoral reform work is to inform the government's work program. Things like 4-year terms are all on the government's work plan and their coalition document. So we want to use this as a launch pad. And the thing about electoral reform of any kind is that it needs a lot of buy-in from communities. You need the mandate over and over again. And while there've been a number of reviews, this is yet another, and it gives us a strong foundation to have solid conversations with the government about how they can progress the work in the interest of local government. And the minister himself is open to those conversations. Yeah. So we will be driving much of that work with the support of our councils, obviously.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillors, any other questions? Okay. Got a motion. So moved by Councillor Hopkins, seconded by Councillor Holding. Thank you. I'm going to put those in. Oh, sorry, you want to speak to that?
I would say to all the members around this table, and perhaps including the LGNZ people, one of the focuses of that meeting we had last week was rates capping. And the fact, and various government ministers confirmed that this is something they are looking at, and that it may well be introduced should they be re-elected in a second term. Now, I don't believe local government can win a don't cap rates argument. Basically, councils individually and collectively will lose that fight. I believe it's absolutely important to actually preemptively campaign to very vigorously identify the percentage of costs and the totality of costs collectively and individually to the extent possible that are imposed on councils by central government as, if you like, an alternative campaign strategy and campaign message. Because unless and until we can unlock treasury funds for things like royalties for regions, GST sharing and so on, the problem is going to persist and get worse. And coincidentally, as an unintended consequence, the demand for rates capping from the public and the willingness to support that by central government politicians is going to increase. We can't win that fight, so we have to fight on another battleground, in my view. And I think it's really important that we start doing that fighting, that campaigning now.
That's very helpful feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, having listened to the presenters from, who've experienced it overseas, you're just on a hiding to nothing as far as, it's going to be a downward trend, as far as spending goes, and what you can actually do is just going to keep getting diminished. But I think if there is a good case made for what are the, there's cap rates, that's fine. But if you're imposing extra stuff, doing more things, give us the extra funding or some funding streams at least, because that real dependency on rates is a real thing for all of us, and we need to make sure that if the rates are capped, then there is other funding somewhere. Right. I'll now put that we receive the information. So those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against, that's carried. Thank you, Ranjani and Harriet. Really appreciate you taking the time to join us. Apologies for being late, by the way, but thanks for your patience there. And just acknowledge the challenge that a membership organisation like LGNZ has, trying to keep everyone happy. You're never going to do. Just as we can never keep all our ratepayers happy, you've got, across
Just
New Zealand.
As long as we keep you guys happy.
Oh, absolutely. No, the 76 councils across New Zealand all have different views on different things, and I really appreciate the hard work that has actually gone in by LGNZ, the whole team, and National Council to try and find the right balance. And equally, oppose the government where it needs to, but work with the government as much as possible and as a cooperative partner. And hopefully they'll see us as that one day. So thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you very much.
Okay. See you then.
Bye.
Okay, councillors, we now go to whatever was next, the 5.6, the Biodiversity Reserve Fund transfer, a fairly minor matter. But we've got Mr. Campbell here to speak to it if we need that. Councillor Thompson.
As this is basically an administrative matter, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to actually move the recommendation.
I'm happy to second that. Do we have anyone wishing to speak or any questions? Okay, those in favour, please say aye.
Okay.
And against, that is carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Campbell. Right. So next one, which I guess is Mr. Campbell as well, though, is road naming and a proposal to name a new street out in the north end, Cambrook Place. So do you wish to speak to this? I'll go to you first, Mr. Campbell.
Thank you, Mayor Kuchar. This one's been quite a long time in the making because probably over 10 years ago, the developer put forward the names for the road, but only really completed stage one of the subdivision, which was to subdivide off their house on the top end of the block. Subsequent to that, a new developer's come along to reconsent and finish the subdivision, and is happy to use the original names that the current landowner put forward. So it's really kind of again, an administrative thing to make sure that we've ticked all the boxes, consulted with Lynn's in terms of road naming, they're happy. And it picks up some suggested names, or the one they prefer is from their home county in the UK, which Mr. Palmer is probably familiar with. So yeah, that's just going through the process to make sure we consider all those relevant matters. It also links to our previous policy on road naming about using waterways from the UK. So it does reflect that, which was at the same time of the original development. So things have moved on, but we're sticking with what they've put forward as a preference.
Okay. Councillor Hopkins moving, we accept that, and seconded was a flurry of hands went up. So I'll go to Councillor Cowles, because just so we know you were here. No, I hadn't got your name against anything, so we'll get that down now. So anyone wish to discuss it? Put it, those in favour of that name, please say aye. And against, that's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Campbell. And we'll go and change all the maps. Okay, now we've got one more item, councillors, which is the meeting schedule. So that's down as S.1. And we've got the governance advisor who has put this together. Appreciably, the LGNZ managed to get their calendar out quite a bit earlier, and for this coming year, and that's pretty critical when looking at what has to go around, what we can fit around that, but also they've said that their aim is to get that calendar out next year by July. So that would be really helpful in getting a meeting schedule adopted earlier. So hand over to you, Ainsley.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you for that introduction, and that would be a wonderful update if they got it out in July. I was impressed that we were talking about it in August, so I do acknowledge that Local Government New Zealand did make that effort to get some information to us earlier than usual. So I'm pleased to deliver this to you today. This is essentially a rollover of what we've had in 2024. You have given some positive feedback on the fact that these meetings are happening at an appropriate time, that we're able to schedule new ones when we need to, but the cycle is working well. But what I have done is picked up on some of the feedback where the financial information was not always available when we were using the fourth Tuesday of the month, because where those months had 5 Tuesdays. So I'm proposing that as the first change, that we move when we do have 5 months in a calendar, in a particular calendar month, then we use the 5th one. So it becomes effectively across the calendar for the year that it is the 5th or the final Tuesday of the month where the council meetings and PAR meetings are held. So we believe, having spoken with officers, that will make a difference to the amount of financial information that will be available. The second one is picking up on the locality model for the transformation program. We believe that both the locality officer and the area managers will have a bit more to do with the community boards. So we want to try and enable the efficiencies to be gained from that. So we have invited the community boards to discuss amongst themselves whether they would be willing to do their meetings on the same day. And we've talked to officers as well. And so everybody is very keen to give it a go. So I'm pleased to be able to be presenting that as well. The community boards have asked for a repeat again of the mid-year joint workshop alongside their July meeting. So we are proposing that. They have asked for the meetings to go first so that the workshop can happen in the afternoon and go as long as it needs to, so that they can have a bit more interaction, including with potentially new officers in new roles as part of the transformation stand-up. So on that note, there is only one other issue that I would like to raise with you. Several councillors have come to me across the course of the year and asked me, would I be prepared to issue the calendar, hardwire it into your calendars so that you do not need to accept or decline because there are so many invitations. So I put that out to you because of the request has come from you. It is something that you would still, it would come into your calendar and you would still have the ability to say accept, decline, but I would get no advice of that. So there would always be an assumption that you would be coming. So it would be up to you then to actually tell me and the chair that you're not. So there's an onus on you to be more proactive about telling me that. But I think that apparently has been weighed up and you would prefer to have it hardwired in than not. But I leave that for you to discuss now. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, just on that, I think it's the bigger challenge is getting multiple invites for a day, which inevitably get changed, and whether there's the possibility just to have one invite go out that blocks out the day, and within that it says this is what's proposed or thought will be happening, whether it's a council meeting, PAR meeting, councillor briefing, and it's only once that's confirmed and timing is confirmed that we get the individual invites. You know, to me that would be just make things easier. So we've got the day blocked out, we know what's going to be on there roughly, subject to whatever the forward planning meeting might change, and that as we get close to that time, that's when we're going to get those other more detailed timings of when things are on. So that would be, to my mind, that would be helpful, but happy to get feedback from councillors as to any that suggestion, but also any other possibilities that they're thinking of. Councillor Hopkins.
Yeah, I personally like the idea of hardwiring everything in. It then becomes the notion of absenting oneself is by exception. And the presumption at the outset is that we would all be coming to all the meetings, and it would be the obligation of each of us, if we were unable for any reason so to do, to advise you, I think, as chair of the meeting, or the person whom you nominate. I have one question in relation to the schedule itself. Well, a question and a comment, really. I noticed that we're identifying in the second week of each month subcommittees, briefings and workshops. That's on page 9 of this supplementary agenda. And then we have dates through the year on pages 10 and 11 and 12. Maybe 13, yes, 13 as well. Anyway, and etc. What I ask and would want is that it is not, in my view, sufficient simply to say subcommittees. I believe we should be identifying the committees and subcommittees that we are intending to have to hold meetings, agendaed meetings. And I'm aware of 3, there may be others, but the Chief Executive Employment Committee, the Harbour Committee and the Roading Committee, in my view, as a placeholder, and I notice there are references to placeholders throughout the document, in my view, even to begin with, as a placeholder, we could schedule monthly or bi-monthly meetings of all of those committees at this stage, subject to subsequent confirmation. But I believe it's really, really important to actually formally include agendaed meetings of identified subcommittees rather than just the generic headline subcommittees.
Thank you, Councillor, and through you, Mr. Chair. As you can see, there is HAC and GAC, that's the Harbour Area Subcommittee, and the Grants and Awards Subcommittee. So those dates there are already in there. We know that there will be a Harbour Area Subcommittee meeting every quarter, and we know when the closing dates and opening dates of all the grants and awards things, that calendar's being done. So those March, April, June and September dates correspond with time after the closure of the Grants and Awards Subcommittee. So I'm happy to talk with the roading subcommittee chair and find out how often he would like to schedule those subcommittees. They were last year done as on a needs basis. That's why they're not appearing here in the rollover. But if that is what you would like to do, then we will need to try and schedule that in that second week. The Chief Executive's Employment Subcommittee is normally held on a Monday rather than a Tuesday, so it wouldn't appear on this calendar.
Nonetheless, I think it's important for other members to know when those meetings are being held for two reasons. One, because the agendas will be generated, and two, because the Act quite clearly entitles all of us to attend all meetings as observers passively with speaking rights if granted. But I think it's important for the rest of us to know when those committees are intended to meet.
I'm happy to follow that lead if that's what the council wishes me to do.
I'm looking for nods or otherwise. Yeah, I think there's a majority of nodding heads. Councillor McCone.
Firstly, thank you for all the work that's gone into the ANZ. It looks like my old period table from high school. Yeah, that was scary at the time as well. But just a couple of comments. Is it possible that anything that comes after a public holiday on the Monday, can we move that out one day? And where I'm coming from with that is a lot of the agendas and the readings arrive on a Thursday or Friday for some of these meetings. And by the time you come through a public holiday, if you're away or anything else, you're actually giving up your public holiday to read some of the stuff. And I'm just putting it out there. It doesn't worry me in the slightest, but it may be easy for everybody.
One of the things that we are committed to for this next round in 2025 is to ensure that all the agendas come out on the Tuesday. We have had a couple of stumbles during the course of the year, but we have had the district plan review subcommittee. We've had a lot of hearings committee meetings, and I am but one person at the moment, so I am completely under-resourced in this particular space. However, we're hoping that we can remedy some of this once we get through the district plan review process, and once I've caught up with all the backlog of minutes, which further to your comment earlier in the meeting today, I do hope to have at the 17 December council meeting. So I take on board what you've said, and if that is something that we feel we need to do, then we will do that. I'd be interested in other views from other councillors, whether you want to consider moving a Tuesday meeting to a Wednesday. It would require some rearrangement from the executive team calendar because they hold their meetings on Wednesdays. So I would invite through you, Mr. Chair, invite the CE perhaps to comment on that.
It's all possible. It has consequences, but it's all possible.
As much as you've raised it and said you don't care, Councillor McCone, I suggest that if we are getting the agendas on the Tuesday, that we're all just maybe give you a reminder there's a holiday on the Monday. But no, not at all. So no, I think we just have to manage it ourselves. But you know, we're essentially getting the agenda a couple of days earlier than we previously have regularly had it. So that would be fine. I think it's only going to be a problem if getting the agenda out's tight and it's a holiday the following week.
We will do what we can to help. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ryan.
Thank you. I just wanted to support Mayor Kirch's comments around the diary issue. Personally, it's the multiple entries for the one event that I think caused the issue for my brain. And I think keeping things on a Tuesday to Councillor McCone's query would be preferable for those people who don't have as much flexibility during the week. Just having that set Tuesday for council activities is preferable.
Very easy to deal with.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I may speak to the multiple entries. We did start off the year doing that. Unfortunately, there is a lot sometimes that happens and there's a lot of changes that are made. So we will do our best to keep it in one framework. We have then broken it down into different meetings because we have different offices that we attend to. So I've spoken with the mayor about this on several occasions. So we do have to break it down into smaller meetings and smaller briefings, etc. So we get the right officers. But if that becomes a problem, then I will have to resort to double issuing, whereby I send the invitation to elected members and then I break it down into officer thing, but I would need to speak to the CE who's now looking at me quite intently. So that would be something that I would have to consider as a resourcing issue. But we will manage that, and those are details we could do later if that's okay.
That's appreciated. Thank you. Councillor Holding.
Thank you, Ainsley. Just thinking forward facing, just dawned on me. I know public forums are probably available to most council meetings, but is it something that could be added in that the community know in the calendar that they could be available to speak at those public forums throughout the year?
That is actually up on the website already, so they know that public forums are held at every full council meeting. So that is the meeting that is held at the end of the month. So it will be emphasised as part of the actual calendar when it goes up. Thank you.
I think there's a different question which isn't really calendar related as to whether we want to make it standard to have public forum at like additional council meetings or extraordinary ones where there will also, but maybe just keep those to the topics that are being discussed at those meetings, whereas council meetings tend to be a broader range of topics can be introduced at those. Just as a suggestion, but yeah, as I say, not related to this. I was surprised to see the community boards on the same day, and as probably the one person who regularly tries to go to both, that was a wee bit of a surprise. But as long as there is enough separation to get from Amarama to Palmerston, it was probably the largest distance to travel on any one day. That would be okay.
Yes, we considered that as well, and we have negotiated with the Waihimo Community Board Chair that if she wants to have her May meeting in Hampden, then that is the one that would have the Ahuriri Community Board meeting in Omarama, so that we whenever Waihimo comes up towards Oamaru, then we take the farthest apart. So they have agreed to work with each other, directed by the Waihimo Community Board Chair who wants to have the May meeting. So the May meeting for Ahuriri will be in Omarama, to shorten that.
Good thinking. Thank you.
Thank you. With your permission, I'm happy to move the recommendations.
Okay.
Just with a question, do we need an additional one relating to this matter of the calendaring of dates, or can that be done by agreement at the meeting?
Which
one? No, the issue that Ainsley raised at the start.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't think it needs a resolution of council. It's an operational matter. It is really just agreement or feedback from you. I considered putting it in as a recommendation, but I felt that it would just tie us in too much if it didn't quite work. So
then I'll just move 1, 2, 3.
Thank you. Move 1, 2, 3 and 4. Seconded. Councillor Linwood. Any discussion? All those in favour, please say aye. And against? It's carried. And also my thanks to Governance Advisor for the work that she's done on this. A bit like Councillor McCone, think back to Waitaki Boys High School and the trying to work out timetables. Yeah, it's probably more of a challenge there, to be fair, but yeah, it does take a bit of coordinating a whole lot of different things amongst some of the things that aren't on here, things like mural forums and the like that the CE and I get involved in as well. So anyway. Yeah. So no, thank you very much, Ainsley, for all of that. I think that might be all. So with that, thanks very much to everyone who may have been watching the live stream. Well done. And to everyone who's participated around this table, thank you very much for your contributions today. It's been a good meeting. So with that, I'll declare the meeting closed.